The Iraqi parliament's recent passage of a law permitting child marriage, allowing nuptials for children as young as 9, has ignited a firestorm of outrage and condemnation from women's rights groups and activists across the nation. The sheer horror of this legislation, which effectively legalizes the sexual exploitation and abuse of minors, has sent shockwaves through the international community. Critics vehemently denounce this act as a catastrophic regression in the fight for children's rights and women's rights in Iraq, effectively dismantling decades of progress. The law, passed amidst allegations of procedural irregularities, grants religious authorities sweeping powers over family matters, encompassing marriage, divorce, and child custody. This transfer of authority effectively undermines existing legal protections and places vulnerable children at heightened risk of abuse and exploitation. The elimination of the 1950s-era ban on child marriage, a cornerstone of child protection legislation, represents a profound and disturbing step backward. The implications are far-reaching and devastating, condemning countless young girls to a life of forced servitude, denied education, healthcare, and the fundamental right to a childhood free from sexual violence. The consequences of this deeply troubling decision extend far beyond the immediate impact on the victims. It normalizes child marriage, perpetuating a cycle of abuse and oppression that transcends generations. The cultural acceptance of child marriage, coupled with the lack of legal recourse, creates a climate of impunity where perpetrators are rarely held accountable for their actions. This legal framework not only fails to protect children, but actively condones their exploitation, paving the way for further human rights violations. Prominent Iraqi lawyer Mohammed Juma, a vocal opponent of the law, poignantly summarized the situation, declaring, "We have reached the end of women's rights and the end of children's rights in Iraq." His words serve as a stark reminder of the devastating impact of this legislation on the most vulnerable members of Iraqi society. The alarming statistics further underscore the gravity of the problem. A 2023 UN survey revealed that 28% of girls in Iraq were married before the age of 18, highlighting the pervasiveness of this deeply rooted social issue. While proponents may argue that child marriage offers a means of escape from poverty for some girls, this perspective ignores the inherent exploitation and long-term consequences faced by these young victims. The reality is far more bleak. These forced unions often end in failure, resulting in lifelong trauma for the young women involved. They face social stigma, severely limited opportunities, and often lack access to education, hindering their ability to build independent and fulfilling lives. The lack of educational opportunities further perpetuates a cycle of poverty and vulnerability, trapping these young women in a vicious cycle of dependence and abuse. Aliyah Nassif, a member of the Parliament's Legal Committee, voiced serious concerns regarding the legality of the vote itself. In an online statement, she asserted that the vote did not meet the minimum quorum requirements for passing legislation, suggesting significant procedural irregularities marred the entire process. Nassif, along with other opponents of the law, intends to challenge the decision before the Iraqi federal court, highlighting the ongoing struggle against this deeply flawed and harmful piece of legislation. The fight to overturn this abhorrent law is far from over, and the international community must remain vigilant in its support for the Iraqi activists and organizations tirelessly working to protect the rights of children and women in the face of this severe setback. The international pressure to reverse this disastrous decision is paramount. The world cannot stand idly by while the rights of children are systematically violated and their futures stolen. The long-term implications of this law are catastrophic, not only for the individuals directly affected, but for the future of Iraq as a whole. The fight to uphold fundamental human rights and protect the most vulnerable members of society must continue. The hope remains that through sustained advocacy, legal challenges, and international pressure, this deeply regressive law can be overturned, and Iraq can once again move towards a future where the rights of its children are not only protected, but actively championed.